Welcome, everyone, to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 16th of August, 2020, and I'm excited to have a special guest here who is Aaron Parecki. We'll bring Aaron on in just a moment here. I want to run through a couple of items in the agenda here really quickly. And also, kind of note, we had some technical issues coming into this again in terms of my video, so hopefully it's coming through okay. Let us know in the chat there if anything's looking off, I guess. So first of all, the sound for live streaming with the ATEM mini course should launch tonight if everything goes well. So stand by for that. I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully, for those of you that are in that boat, that would be helpful. Hope we find it helpful as well. Secondly, the Zoom just did a review and posted a review of the Zoom PodTrack P4. So if you are interested in that, it is a podcaster's recorder, and it looks like a pretty interesting little device at $200. So if you're interested in that, that's over on the main channel as well. All right. I am excited to bring in my new friend, Aaron Parecki. So, Aaron, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background, and why did we bring you on for streaming?
Yeah, sure thing. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Aaron Parecki. My background, I guess, is in live streaming, and that's kind of what I focus on here on YouTube. I've done a lot of live events in the past of streaming conferences and small events like that, where pretty much just as a solo operation. So I'm the only one that goes there and films everything and produces the videos afterwards. But that's obviously not happening right now anymore. And I've, as well as in my day job, which is actually doing trainings, has also moved online. So I've just been full on in like deep dive in the world of live video production and online streaming lately. So, I live on Zoom and stream all the time on YouTube and those platforms. So including StreamYard, like this one. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Very good. Very good. Well, thanks again so much for joining. I give a little background for the people that have joined the stream here today. We were experiencing some issues, and Aaron helped me work some of those audio issues out before we got started. StreamYard was doing something a little funny where it was sending Aaron's audio back from my end to him again. So we actually, I'm using an analog mixer that I never use for streaming. So this is my first time using this here. It's a little Mackie mixer here. So if it's okay, I think what we'd like to do is we had some people submit some questions ahead of time. And Aaron, are you okay if we kind of run through some of those?
Sure thing.
All right. So let's go ahead and pop back over to here. All right. First one is coming in from James. James says, when live streaming a musical event, is there a need to use multiple mics panned left and right to try and obtain a stereo effect? Or are most of the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, mono when live streaming? What's your...
Yeah, good question. I'm pretty sure they all stream in stereo, and I would say that if you can get a stereo effect, it just sounds better. So I would recommend going for the stereo effect there. Obviously, like as just a single person talking in a microphone, there's not a lot of benefit to stereo there. But for music, it does sound a lot better without being mixed down to mono.
Agreed. Yeah, and I was actually going to say, in the live setting, I don't know if when you do your live streams, are you also doing the live PA sound as well?
Oh, yeah. When I do the in-person events, I typically try to avoid doing the audio work for the venue.
Yeah.
It's one too many things to manage. I'm already doing a lot with. I try to run the projector screen so that I can control. So I don't have, when you're like watching at a conference and people like unplug their laptop and then you have to wait for the like flicker and it turns black and like it's awful, right? So I try to smooth that out by feeding the projector myself so that I get the people pushing their slides into the video booth and I feed the projector. So between that and actually then doing the mixing and the recording of the video, managing the audio is one too many moving parts for me to do. So I always go in there and I say, just give me a XLR out from the mixer. And the venue audio staff takes care of the PA systems.
Okay, good. Yep, that makes sense, and it simplifies the process. And that, I mean, frankly, that's the way productions work because you have a team that can do the
Yeah.
different parts. So the one thing I did think of in regards to James' question as well, I was actually working on this course over the week, and I was demonstrating how to use various gear to kind of be a front end as far as audio is concerned, and then feed that into the ATEM. And one thing I did encounter is that a lot of us, when we do live streams, will play some music before we go live, even if it's just us talking into a microphone. And I think there is some value feeding stereo there as well, because I was actually playing back one of the tracks that I typically use, and I'm like, huh, sounds really weird. And then I went, oh, I'm feeding mono. That's why. So if you've got, almost all music is mixed in stereo, and it can actually do some pretty funny things if you're just playing back one of the channels or something that's summed down to mono. So definitely something
Yeah,
to
it's a really
consider.
good point.
Yeah,
Really good point.
cool. All right, let's jump over to our next question here. All right, next up from Nevraz. Let's say there are guests with lavalier mic placed and they are continuously causing noise by touching nearby the lavalier microphone during their speech. What is the best way to give them warning without interrupting the whole program? And what backup solution would be useful?
Oof, yeah, dealing with talent is always a challenge. This is, I don't think there's a good solution for this. I think your best bet is the backup audio, because trying to tell people something, trying to tell the guests or the talent anything about like what's going on the production side while they're live is a recipe for disaster always. Like unless they are very well trained at it, and then they're probably not going to be fiddling with the mic in the first place. But interrupting them and trying to say like, trying to communicate, you only have a couple words that you can get across, and you're not going to be able to effectively say what you're trying to say, and gestures are probably going to be misinterpreted. So I would cut over to backup audio, and that's a great reason to have backup audio as well. And I would also say that like lav mics, while they're great, because of those issues, they are a little bit more finicky if people aren't used to wearing them, and they can cause those problems. And it depends on what clothing people wear, or people don't often think that they don't remember they have to have something that the belt pack can clip onto. So they may not come prepared wearing the right clothing, or like I hate attaching lav mics to t-shirts, for example, because there's no good place to put it. So yeah, I always try to do the audio where it's something that the people don't have to think about too much. The flip side, of course, is if it's not attached to them, then you run the risk of them forgetting that the mic actually has to be near their face all the time, not just some of the time. And they'll like move around and hold the mic away from their face, and then you get really bad audio too.
Sure. Use it as a pointer, pointing it. So I'm curious, Aaron, have you ever worked with headset mics for your live productions?
Actually, no, I haven't. Well, not myself. Some of the productions have used headset mics, but they tend to be more expensive, so they tend to be in the places that have a more professional audio setup in the first place. And that's when the house staff is, they're doing their own audio engineering, and they're the ones miking everybody up.
Right.
But when in the few events that I do run the audio for, in the much smaller events, we don't have the headset mics for that, just because it's also too much to it's expensive because you can't like hand it off quickly. So you need multiple in order to do transitions between people. So it ends up adding up a lot really quick.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it does solve some of those problems, but you're right. And it's also, some talent just find them extraordinarily uncomfortable. And so you have to have multiple size, they have the little hanger things that go over the ears, and you have to have different sizes, and it can be a challenge from that standpoint. Good.
And to do it right, you need the little different color pads. What are they called? The little thing that goes on the tip.
Oh, right. The little wind cover, the foam covers.
Yeah. Because you need to make sure it matches the skin tone of the person.
Right.
So you need a full set of those as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just a lot of considerations there as well. It also depends on the format too. Like if you have a trainer, if you have a trainer doing a training session, and the training session is going to last for a while, and you're not switching between speakers necessarily, that's where it seems a little bit more feasible, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Okay. I would also say I agree on all fronts. I think it is a challenge. A boom mic, if you have a format where a boom mic works and they're not moving around, I think, and back to Nevers's question, I think that's a fine solution. That as long as they're not moving around, because as soon as they move out of range of that boom mic, then you have that problem as well. So it's the same issue there. But that can work if I think that would be more of a guest on a live stream kind of like a sit down interview kind of situation, I guess.
Mhm.
Honestly, I think what I find is that if you're going to do an interview, if that's what it is, having a mic that they have to be up pretty close on, like a dynamic microphone, is not a bad idea. I know a lot of people hate having a microphone in frame if you're doing video streaming, but what I find is that for people that don't have a lot of microphone technique experience, if you have a microphone in and you say, here are your headphones, put your headphones on and make
Mhm.
sure you stay within the range of your microphone, and they'll be able to hear at least hopefully they'll hear when they start falling off. So that's another thought as well.
That's a really good point. Yep. It definitely does depend on the context for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look and see. I think we've got one more question here. All right, from Mike K. Question regarding sound for live streaming. So let me just give you a background before I read Mike's question here. Mike has his wife is actually a professor at Cal Berkeley, and so she's going to be doing some online courses here in the next little bit. So that's kind of the background for his question here. I have a question regarding sound for live streaming and syncing it properly. My wife will be teaching her fall college course online from our home studio. I have wireless lav mics as well as a desk boom and optional head-worn lav. I am planning to put them through a MixPre 6.2 with Mix Assist and take the stereo out to the ATEM Mini Pro mic inputs. Since my Sony a6600 camera has an audio out setting live or lip sync, and both the MixPre 6.2 and the ATEM Mini Pro both also have audio delay features, where would be the best place to sync the delay?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. I actually am not familiar with a couple of these things. So I have not used a MixPre, so I don't actually know what the Mix Assist feature is. And also, I'm very curious to hear about what this lip sync feature is in A6600. I have also not heard of that.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with either of those?
Well, MixPre, I can talk a little bit about that. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, the lip sync feature, I think, is made specifically for live streaming because the camera manufacturers are starting to realize, hey, streaming's kind of a big deal, and and they also realize that, hey, our HDMI outputs have a lot of latency. So if somebody's going to be connecting I think it's basically another way to apply an audio delay. But that doesn't make sense on the camera though, does it? Because
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Usually
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Well, generally the way you want to deal with audio sync in streaming cameras is reduce the number of places that it can be, like delay can be introduced, and bring your audio in sync with the video as early in the chain as possible. So that's sort of the overarching principles. So the simplest setup is audio straight from the camera with the built-in mic, and then that's just going out the HDMI port, so it's guaranteed to be in sync. The step up from that, of course, because the built-in mics are often terrible, is an external mic plugged directly into the camera. And that's by far the simplest, because the camera knows its HDMI delay. Like, it's doing the encoding. Like the delay is because the camera is encoding the signal into HDMI, and it will bring in the microphone, the audio, and match it up so that what's coming out the HDMI port is synced up. So that will be in sync from an external microphone. So that's the easiest way to make sure your audio is in sync, because you don't really have to do anything. But if you want to use fancier microphones or multiple microphones, that's where it starts to get tricky. And then you're going to use an external audio device like the MixPre or any of these external interfaces. And that's where you start to introduce the mismatch. So the camera is going to have some amount of delay on the video. And depending on the camera, the video delay will be different. So I have some cameras that are basically only like one frame delay, which is not really noticeable. And then actually this one is pretty noticeable. This one's several frames delayed. So it looks terrible if your audio is ahead. And that's where you need to then delay your audio to make it match the camera. And if you have one camera, then all your audio is going to be delayed to that camera, and you're not going to have to worry about like the different microphones you're using. I'm pretty sure that even all wireless microphones don't have a delay effectively. Is that true? Like the delay on them is not really noticeable enough that it matters.
Well, it depends. If it's
Okay.
if it's an analog system, that's true. If it's a digital system, then it can have latency.
Have you actually dealt with ones that have enough latency that it matters?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Deity makes one called the Deity Connect system, and it has about 20 milliseconds of latency, and so it's just starting to become noticeable at that point.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the other real challenge here is dealing with multiple cameras, which a lot of people are doing now, thanks to the ATEM Mini making that much more accessible to people.
Mhm.
And that's also where you get some really interesting problems because cameras don't have the same video delay. So if you're mixing different cameras, your video is delayed differently. So you'll end up with some cameras being ahead of other cameras, and then you have to decide which one to match your audio to. And there isn't really a good solution because there aren't really video delay devices. Certainly not at the price point we're talking about the A10 Mini.
Right.
So that is, I usually tell people if you do have multiple different brands of cameras with different delays, use them in a way where the delay of where you only have like one main shot, and use the other cameras where people won't notice the audio is out of sync. So like in a really wide shot where you can barely see people's lips because they're like 3 pixels tall, no one's going to notice the delay, like
Right.
the out of sync there. But the main shots of people close up, you want to make sure those are in sync.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, and also be careful. I mean, if you're going in and you're still planning things out and you haven't bought all your gear yet, just be really careful about using different types of cameras, even from the same manufacturer. If they're different
Yeah.
camera models, it can still be a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, for example, when I've done multi-camera, rather than use my favorite camera, my Canon C200, I'll actually get out the Panasonic GH5 and the GH5S because they're much closer, and that way it's not as
Yeah.
much of a
For
problem.
sure.
And I think your point is good as well for just a very practical kind of, gosh, I don't have any other options. What am I going to do? Make sure you use sync to the one camera that's going to be your close up, and then, let the others fall where they may, so to speak. So good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the question here. I think there was a follow up here, and I'm actually going to talk about the mix pre a little bit as well. So,
Mhm.
actually, he goes on. Mike says, "Should I simplify the multiple mic setup? Which is the best place?" Let's just stop there. Should I simplify the multiple mic setup? Let's talk about that. What's your take, Aaron?
I mean, it sounds like this is one person on camera, right? So there's one. It's a trainer situation where but this is like what I do most of the time.
Right.
And I would say, yeah, simplify it. Like fewer moving parts. And I can talk a little about what I've got here as well, which I've worked quite a bit on fine tuning over the last several months. But my favorite option is honestly a simple microphone plugged directly into the camera, because no batteries to charge, no extra things to turn on. Like fewer moving parts is better. It just makes things a lot easier to use. So I basically have this just permanently set up. I have a Lumix G7 because it's really cheap, and I can use nice lenses with it. And it has a microphone input. So this is just permanently attached to this desk. I don't take this camera off ever, which means I can walk in here, hit the power switch on the camera, plug in my computer, and I'm ready to go. And that's it. So it's super simple. And I think that's a lot, especially if you're going to be doing this for a long period of time and, multiple days in a row. You want to really reduce the amount of setup time involved. So the fewer pieces involved, the better. That's my take on it.
I agree. And I think part of it too. So the Mix Assist feature, going back to the Mix Pre and how we made reference to that earlier. What Mix Assist is really made for is that if you have multiple people on camera having a conversation of some sort, so an interview or a roundtable discussion or something like that, that's what that's really made for, Mike. So that's going to be what that's going to accomplish is for the person that's talking, it keeps their mic open, but for the people that are not currently talking, it basically pulls the fader back on their microphones so that you get a cleaner overall mix.
Oh,
I
that's cool.
think it's super cool. It's a really nice feature, and it really simplifies audio production when you have those kind of situations and you're just operating solo. The problem if you do it with one person is that I think Mix Assist could get pretty confused depending on, like, if she's standing and she's got a lavalier microphone on and she's standing close to the desk microphone, it's going to be doing some of this kind of back and forth stuff. And so I think that's going to get really distracting. So I probably would, as Aaron suggested, I would go with a simpler setup in as much as possible. And I don't know if, Mike, you'll be there operating sound. If you are, that's a different thing. And you could actually, I would actually just mute the mics that are not currently in use. And just, I probably would not use Mix Assist. Just turn that off because I think it's just going to get confused and make some things go funky. So, and I think there was also one other question here along with it. Which is the best place for some audio EQ, Mix Pre or ATEM? What do you think, Aaron?
Well, so I guess I guess it depends. So one of the benefits.
It's a trick
Well,
question.
it's a trick question. Okay. I'm curious to hear what you're going to say. But what I will say is, and this may not apply here, but if you want to be able to record this and mix it later, then doing the EQ in the ATEM at the streaming point means your recording does not include the EQ, so you can mix the EQ later and adjust it later from the raw signal. I try to do this with video as well, where if I know that I want to be able to go back and edit the videos later, which like I don't for my own live streams, but for conference recordings, I absolutely do, then I will try to keep the signal as clean as possible and then stream something that like I'll add a logo of the conference in the corner only in the stream, not when I'm recording, right? That way, when I go back and edit the recordings, I can choose whether the logo appears all the time, or maybe we want to change it later and I didn't like the logo version I used on the stream. So, keeping it as clean as possible up until the last possible point and adding in the other stuff later. So that I would put EQ in the same category where I may tweak the EQ for the stream, but I may not be convinced that what I chose at that point was actually the best mix. Mm-hmm. So I want to keep the signal clean earlier so I can go back and change it later.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I assume you're talking about recording at the camera. Is that what when you're talking about recording? So you wouldn't be taking a recording out of the USB port from the ATEM Mini
right.
Pro.
So in the ATEM Mini Pro, I would do the EQ in that so that what it streams sounds good, and then record in the camera. And then if you're using like a Mix Pre, record audio in a separate audio device where the EQ is not done in that device.
Agreed.
Yep. And that way you get isolated recordings of like the raw material that you can remix later.
Makes sense. Yeah. The trick of that question was that Mix Pre doesn't have EQ. So non-issue. Well, I mean, it has it does have a low cut filter. So I guess that's kind of an EQ.
Okay.
That's about all it has. So Mike, yeah, we would probably recommend, and I don't know in your wife's case for the lectures, I don't know if there's going to be a post-production process where you go back and actually edit those and kind of post those on her course page in Canvas, or if you're using anything like that. But I agree with Aaron wholeheartedly that best to keep it clean if you can. So I would do it in the ATEM, send it out on the stream, and then if you do need to record, you've got a clean recording you can work with. Even then you could use a preset. Like if there's something, if she's doing the same thing, it's the same voice in the same room with the same microphones every time, pretty good chance that the same EQ is going to work each time as well. So you can just make a preset and apply that in post if you need to do that as well.
Yeah, and the ATEM has some really good mixing controls now as well, the ATEM Mini. It's got very good EQ and dynamics and compressor and limiter, all that stuff is all built in now, which is super powerful.
Yeah. Like surprisingly, so I'm really impressed with what I see there, and I like to think I'm kind of a sound guy, so I care a lot about that, but it seems to really have some good stuff there. All right, Aaron, would you mind kind of just telling us? So you told us a little bit. So you've got the G7 is your camera there, the Lumix G7, and then which microphone are you using, and how do you have that attached to the camera?
Yeah, I can give you a little desk tour here. So this is what I'm seeing right now.
Drop me.
And this is, so my camera is sitting, oops, sorry about the little wobbles. My camera's sitting up there. And then this is the mic I'm using, and it's on it's on that, everything is mounted to this pole. So this microphone is a Movo VXR10, tiny little thing, 1/8 inch jack out the back, does not take any power, or I guess maybe it's powered from the camera, I don't even know. And it's just running through this nice long wire around into the camera, and then that is plugged into the ATEMs on my desk. And so I'm really just taking in, you can see there's only one audio source enabled on the ATEM. It's just from the camera. And yeah, the camera is the G7, and the with the, yeah, audio input. What else? What else am I?
Okay. No, that's great. That's a great. That's
Yeah.
super simple. That's the thing that's beautiful about this. It's super simple. You can go in and you can start streaming. You push a button basically, and you can start streaming and go to work.
Oh yeah, the audio settings that I'm using on this. So I do some processing in the ATEM of this. I have a little bit of a dynamics going on. So I've got a I don't think it's gonna work if I share my screen to StreamYard. I think it's gonna look bad. But I've got no, I can do it. I'm in the middle of it, so I should be able to do this. Does that look about right?
Yep.
Great. So yeah, I've got, this is the curve I'm using. So I'm using a bit of a expander and compressor here, some makeup gain. And the reason is because if I turn these off, you'll hear some noise from things. So let me just try this real quick. So this is what it sounds like with no effects.
Wow.
It's noticeable, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
it's also 100 and some degrees there right now, right?
Yeah, it's not my favorite temperature.
Very good. So how do you go about tuning those settings there? So you've got, it sounds like some air conditioning or something, some other sort of fans going in the room. What's your kind of process for tuning? Would you mind walking us through that?
Yeah, there's actually, like, I got to figure out where that noise actually is coming from, because I think the only thing actually making significant noise here is my computer fan.
Okay.
Because I have this HyperDeck, but I swapped the fan out, so it's dead silent now, and the ATEMs don't make any noise. And most of my networking gear is in another room, so it's pretty quiet. And I definitely do not have my sound treatment done. Like, you can hear a little bit of that echo still.
Yeah.
But basically, my process is I go into, I guess I can walk through it here. So without this, let me swap headphones. So sorry, I won't be able to hear you right now, but I'm trying to, this is so I can listen to myself. So I can hear that fuzz. So I will turn on, this is like what it defaults to, right? When you like first turn it on. So I can still hear it. So I wait until it starts clamping down on the silence, which you can also see with this gain reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll tweak this too to see if that helps. And then I put a compressor so that I can boost the whole thing.
Okay.
And now you can hear that it's a lot, it's doing better at, well, now it's a little bit fuzzy. So it's doing better at clamping down. God, listening to myself on the 5 frames of delay is awful. I'm switching back to the other headphones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think this is a little bit different than it was before, but hopefully it doesn't sound terrible.
It looks like the threshold's kind of right on the edge there. It's going a little bit there, but
yeah, you hear that little fluttering, which is when the threshold's right at the level of your background hiss.
Yeah, yeah. Good. I wonder if you don't mind if we change the topic a little bit. One of the things that I have to thank you for was that you wrote a little JavaScript snippet and some CSS for displaying YouTube chat in your live stream, which we use and we love. It's been really helpful. So, do you have a development background? How did that come to be?
Oh yeah, yeah. My background is actually in like software development, and what I do for my day job is actually training in effectively like online security, like website security.
Okay,
So that's actually the shirt that I'm wearing right now. This is
gotcha. Oh,
the standard that I help write and have wrote a book on and do trainings on. I'm in the middle of filming a course on it right now. So yeah, I have a lot of been building websites since the 90s, like doing that forever.
okay.
And I've just always also enjoyed video stuff. So I look for excuses to do video work, and sort of spun up a side business doing the conference recording gigs.
Cool. So people ask, I've had a lot of questions. Hey, how do you put the chat on the screen like that? And I always send them to your GitHub site. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Are you still
Yeah,
maintaining that? Okay.
I mean, I'm using it on my stream still. I will say it's like the way that one works is definitely a hack, and it's not at all like something. It could break at any time based on if YouTube just changes their design at any point.
Right.
There is a proper way to do it, which is to use APIs and use OAuth and all that. John from Here to Record actually has been building a proper version of that. So it's built into a desktop app that you can just download and it works. It's a lot easier than the version I have. It looks a little bit different, and but you can like customize the look of it if you know a little bit of CSS. But it works a little bit different, but it's pretty good. And I would probably recommend people use that more than the hacked version that I've got going. Even though I like my hacky version.
I like your hacky version too. In fact, I tried to use the H2R graphics version that John put together, and I couldn't get the APIs working. I mean, I couldn't get the two of them talking. I requested my API key, got all that set up.
Oh yeah.
I thought. But they just wouldn't talk to each other. And I only had so much time, so I came back and I'm still using yours.
Yeah.
So there are some challenges there. And I think one of the challenges on that end too is that it works differently. Whereas in yours, because of the way the chat works within YouTube, you just get the new, as the chat progresses, you just get all the new chat. On that one, I think it actually has to make an API call every time you want to kind of essentially pull all the new chat comments.
Right.
And I think there's some limits on how many API calls you can make, I think.
YouTube is really locking down on like APIs and what is possible and limits around them for some good reasons, but it has this unfortunate side effect of I just want to show the live chat on my stream, and now I can't for more than an hour because I've run through all the API credits.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Tricky stuff. So
yeah.
All right, let's go to the chat here today and see. I think we had some questions. If you do have a question for Aaron, let's go ahead and if you can just put at Curtis Judd Audio, and Emma will pick that up. So let's go ahead and show some here. Can you talk a little bit about the setup going on here today with how you have Aaron's video audio coming in? Yeah. Aaron, do you want to talk about StreamYard? You've used it more than I have.
Yeah, I actually really like StreamYard. So this is StreamYard, which is got this nice little logo up here because this is the free version. If you pay them, you can remove the logo or add your own. But what this is basically a website where it uses a webcam on a computer to bring in audio and video, and then StreamYard is the one pushing to YouTube. So what's going on here is we are both using ATEM minis as a webcam in a browser, and then in the StreamYard website, we've both chosen ATEM Mini as a webcam. So the ATEM Mini is not doing the streaming at all. It's doing webcam encoding into the computer. The computer is pushing it to StreamYard. StreamYard mixes the two together and then pushes that to YouTube. That's also how these YouTube comments are coming in. This is all done on StreamYard as well.
Right. And these are actually, they do a very nice job of that too, I think.
Yeah.
Really good. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the answer. All right. I'm hearing a gate on the Movo VRX, and yes, I think we walked through that.
We talked about that.
Definitely. Good ear. 2 ATEMs. Why? That's a good question.
That's a good question. So on my channel, I do live streams and tutorials and reviews of streaming gear, and I do a live Q&A about ATEMs every week. And part of that is I want to be able to show things on the ATEM. And one of the things that the ATEM Mini Pro has is the multi-view. And in order for me to show the multi-view on the stream, I need to feed that HDMI out into something that is streaming. So I have the second ATEM HDMI plugged into the other, the one that's actually doing the streaming, so that I can actually show the multi-view of the ATEM on the stream. Another nice side effect of that is it gives me a few more inputs to use. So I can also add a few more cameras, and I can go in and show the ATEM settings and like mess around with stuff, try out keyer settings and whatever, and not mess up my main stream, right? Because I'm streaming from the one I'm not changing the settings to the one I'm streaming when I'm demoing that.
Yeah.
That's the main reason.
Okay. Just a follow-up question, if I may, just for my own selfish interest. Where does one learn about what an upstream key is versus a downstream key, and kind of all the complexities around keying? What's your best suggestion there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say probably YouTube is the best place, because I feel like it's such a visual tool. Like, it's always about making images appear on a screen. And I find it very difficult to read about that in text form. So I don't think reading the manual is very helpful to learn that stuff. So I would look for videos explaining it. And I keep meaning to do one just explaining the basics of the keyer settings in the ATEM. But there are videos about the higher end models of ATEMs. Plenty of people are doing those videos about those for a long time. And the technology is the same. So if you look up like the ATEM Television Studio or the 4K ones or whatever, like, it's all the same stuff. It's just like there's less of it in the ATEM Mini. So it's the same keyer, it's the same upstream, same downstream. Those all work the same way. And yeah, I would say like just search YouTube for those, and don't be put off by the fact that it may not be called ATEM Mini upstream keyer, because it's all the same stuff.
Yep. All works the same, especially all the stuff from Blackmagic. I think some of the other manufacturers have a slightly different way of implementing some of it, but same idea. Good. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. Why did you switch from the Samson CO2 to the Movo?
That's a good question. So this is my live streaming, my desk setup. And on this one, I have the Movo up here because it's so simple, because it's not powered. It can run directly into the camera, no batteries, like it just works. And it's cheap enough that I don't have to worry about like needing another one if I wanted to. I don't ever move this one, right? It's stuck here. Same reason I use a relatively cheap camera, because I wouldn't permanently mount my GH5S on this desk, because I actually want to use that for other things as well. I still do use the Samson CO2, but not for my live streaming desk. So I use that when I'm filming on the other desk over there, where I'm doing the more edited videos. And that is then running into a external recorder that takes batteries or USB power, where that is one too many pieces to use for my I want to flip a switch and be live streaming desk. So I do like both mics still. But they just have different purposes, I guess.
Yeah, and I think there's a theme kind of developing here. Is what I find as well, having just done our scrappy little live stream here, is that it's always best to keep the setup simple, because anything, we were here 15 minutes early trying to figure out why my audio setup was streaming your audio back to you. And so, that's why we're a couple minutes late starting, actually, is because I was fussing around trying to get that fixed, and the simpler the better. You're just not going to have to fight with that kind of stuff as much.
Yeah, exactly.
So, good. Okay. Another question here. Planning on an audio-only interview over Skype, recording to mix pre external mic at my end. Do I need to worry about mix minus? What do you think, Aaron?
Over Skype. So, I mean, that was the problem we had here, was depends on how your audio is set up. But if you are feeding, I guess if you're I guess it depends on if you're live streaming this or not. Because if you're recording it, it's a lot easier to avoid the loopback issues. But the problem is if Skype or if any of these video platforms, if you are feeding your ATEM camera to that video platform and streaming from the ATEM, this is like, what I want to do is open up Skype or Zoom on my computer, screen share that into the ATEM and have my camera on me, and then stream from the ATEM up to YouTube. The problem is that the audio mix is being done entirely in the ATEM. So you want that to have the full mix. But if that's your audio source going into Zoom, or Skype, you need the mix minus, right? So you only need to worry about it if the thing that is feeding your video into the Skype call or your audio into the Skype call is the thing that's also streaming. So you can work around it by, for example, having a dedicated laptop just to Skype. And if you don't worry about what the person on the other end is seeing, then you can just use the webcam in the laptop, right? Where that's not going out to the stream, that's just for them to see you. And then you can have that laptop as a video input into the stream. And then because that's sort of like totally separate, it's a self-contained device. You don't have any of that loop back issues with the audio.
Right. I found also, just to add to that, in regards to John's question here, I have found that Skype appears to have its echo cancellation technology. So it tries to do that on its own. And it does it with varying levels of success. So what I have found is if I am doing an audio-only interview and recording it via Skype, what I do is I do set up a mix minus. That way you don't put that strain on Skype to try and figure it out and sometimes fail. So we do have a video where we ran through how to do a mix minus on the mix pre. So I would definitely have take a look at that, and I would use that just to be sure. So, although I have to say the Skype echo cancellation has gotten a lot better. It is better than it used to be. The challenge, I think, one thing I would say, John, though, is that when you do invite your guest, especially since you're doing audio only, I would ask them to please wear headphones rather than listen back on speakers, because then you'll just avoid that feedback mess as well. So,
yeah.
All right. Ken has a little feedback for you, Aaron.
Yeah, I like it. So no, I'm actually like very conscious of the design going on in here. I'm trying to make this space this is a converted garage. So I was started from scratch. So like I put in a floor, I added a wall. This wall is new. That used to be the garage door. So like I've been building this thing up, and I'm very paying attention to the design a lot. Let me show you the rest of the space. Sorry in advance. It's a little bit of a disaster, but this is where I actually am sitting, right? So this is also, sorry for the camera feed. This is not a good picture, but this is my security camera. But this is the corner I'm sitting on streaming, and then you can see the paint. I've got some very fun designs going on, right? And what I'm using right now for sound is these little panels I've just sort of thrown together. I've glued these onto this poster board, and they're kind of scattered around, which helps a lot. Also, that giant rug is doing an awful lot of work helping right now. I'm also in the middle of building this shelf. But this is, yeah, so I do not want to cover up those fun walls and the angles. So I'm trying to figure out what I can do to get acoustic dampening in here that fits the theme of the design. So I'm thinking about building triangle ones to match the sort of triangle, the angles going around here. So
very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Fun project. I don't know how you have time to do all that, but that is a very cool project.
Yeah. The timeline on it got accelerated once I started having to stream from here instead of traveling. So
Yes. All right, Lloyd has a question. I think, Lloyd, we actually talked a little bit about this, but so handling lower thirds. Aaron himself actually has created a little JavaScript snippet along with some CSS that actually will grab the live stream chat from the YouTube studio and allows you to key that in using a different HDMI input. So typically what we do here is that Emma's got a laptop running that chat, and then we key out just the top portion of that and show that in the lower thirds of the screen here. There's another way to do it too that Aaron actually recommended over his own solution, which I don't necessarily promote yet. I think he's got some work to do still, but there's an application called H2R Graphics, which does a similar thing, but you're still using the keying feature on the ATEM Mini. The difference with the H2R Graphics is it's going and hitting the APIs for YouTube and pulling the chat comments back that way. So similar type thing.
Well, and even if we're not talking about chat lower thirds, just general lower thirds, H2R Graphics is also really good for that as well, where you can go in and create presets of text and then like click a button to show them on the screen. The other way that I do lower thirds with the ATEM though is in Photoshop. So because Blackmagic ships a Photoshop plugin where you can actually just take a canvas in Photoshop, export it directly into the ATEM over the network. So it's actually very quick. You can actually do it like at a live event. If you have a graphics person sitting there making graphics in Photoshop, they can just be pushing them into the media pool directly. So that's another really good way to do it. And the benefit there is that you can get really nice transparency. You can get graphics that use like fade out or have nice soft edges, where it's a lot harder to do that if you are keying it out of just a green or a black background.
Yeah, yeah, cool. That would be a fun tutorial. Have you covered that already on your channel?
I have a video talking about sort of high level summary of 3 different ways to do graphics into the ATEM Mini.
Okay.
But I haven't gone in depth into that yet.
Okay. Well, you're making yourself the expert, so that I'm sure the expectations are high.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Lloyd. Ike, did you get your ATEM stream bridge already? Just saw something
no,
similar.
that hasn't shipped yet. There's a HyperDeck Studio Mini, which is for graphics playback, video playback. And on top of that are 2 SDI to HDMI converters, because that's a SDI device for the higher end switchers, but ATEM Mini only has HDMI. So that's probably what you saw. It's a little gray boxes that same sort of graphic design as the Stream Bridge.
Yeah. So you have a Stream Bridge on order. Do you also have an ATEM Mini ISO Pro ISO?
I have it on order. They aren't in the US yet, and I'm really upset at all of my European friends who already got theirs. But yeah, I'll be getting the ISO. I'm looking forward to that as well.
That seems like it would make sense for the productions you're doing on the side there, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. Camille, is it possible that the ATEM Mini Pro gets an update in the future to stream and record in 4K 30? What do you think, Aaron?
I know it's not possible for the current ATEM Mini models to get a firmware update to support that. It is just completely different hardware. It requires too much additional processing. I do believe it's possible they would launch a new product that supports 4K, but it would be a new product, and no idea the timeline or how much it would cost. I feel like it would run a lot hotter because it's doing more stuff, so it might need bigger fans or a bigger case to support that. So we'll see where that goes.
Agreed. And I'm curious, on your ATEM Minis, any of the models, so you have the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro, have you ever had the fans come on during productions, or is it...
I mean, they're like, as far as I can tell, they're just constantly on, but they're just silent. They don't make any sound. I haven't ever heard any noise from them. I can like feel the air coming out, but it doesn't make any noise. They put really good fans into those, thankfully.
Yeah, they've done a great job, and I agree. I think thermally, there's just no way they could pack. I would be shocked if there was a 4K version in the same form factor, with the same number of inputs and outputs. And yeah, I'd just be impressive. I'd buy one for sure, but don't foresee that happening. Okay, cool. Let's see what else we've got here. B&H reports the Zoom F4 is discontinued. Any word on an F4N? I'll take that one unless, Aaron, you have a burning desire to take. Okay. Yeah, F4 is discontinued. I did get word from Zoom that that it's discontinued. So I don't know anything about an F4N, so I don't have anything to share on that front. To be honest, I had to tell you, Bangs Naughty Bits. If I did, I would probably be under embargo, so I probably couldn't tell you. But I can tell you that I'm not under embargo, and I have no idea. So nothing on that front. Okay, what else have we got here? Looks like Aaron, you've answered all the questions. There's no more. There are no more questions.
Great.
Actually, here's one. Go ahead and put Rebecca's item up on the screen. It's very strange. There's no off switch on the ATEMs. What do you think about
I
that?
agree. I agree. I think it was an oversight, honestly. I understand why there isn't one because this is most of what they make, most of what Blackmagic makes is production hardware and it's high-end gear. And you put it in a rack and it's in a TV studio and it's just on all the time. Or the entire rack you want shut off. So you put like a single switch that kills the whole rack power. And that way everything turns on at the same time and it just runs. That makes sense for that situation. So I think that they were just thinking of this as the same thing. You know, it's another ATEM. Let's just build it the same way. But they're marketing this to a completely different audience, an audience that they haven't really marketed to before, of like people at home or in small business scenario. And I think they made a mistake by not including a power switch because the power switch does make sense in that scenario of this is the only thing on my desk that is not my computer and my monitors and everything else turns off and this thing just stays on. The other problem is that the lights are really bright and it is honestly, they're like in a dark room, it is a light source. And I would like to see dimmable interface first of all, but a power switch would also work because like if you have this in a living room to stream a game, gaming like they put on their website of like a person playing a game and streaming in the living room, you probably want it to power it down at night. Otherwise, it's this giant glowing thing. So I do think it was a mistake that they didn't include a power switch.
Yeah, I have to suspect. One thing I think that we all need to keep in mind too is that the ATEM Mini is just a groundbreaking product from the standpoint that when it was first launched, it was $300. Was it $300? $300 for.
$300.
I mean, that is unreal.
Yeah,
Unreal.
that's why I got excited about it in the first place because I have been using this kind of gear for a long time, and I know how expensive it is.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a 4-input switcher, like with all these other features in it for $300, even without the multi-view, it's still an incredibly good deal.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else like it at that price point, and it is really an amazing little piece of technology.
It is, and I sometimes wonder. Maybe so a couple things off switch, headphone jack, monitoring jack.
Yeah.
I have to think two things. Number one, they were trying very hard to hit a price point. So I think there was that. Anytime you can jettison little things like that, you're going to just save on, your cost basis. But another thing too is the form factor. Like is there any room inside this thing for the internals required for an on-off switch? Probably. For a headphone jack, once you get up into the ISO, I'm starting to wonder if there's even room anymore in there. That they've got to keep this thing cool enough. It's doing all this processing. It's recording, encoding. It's just so much going on in there. It's amazing to me that they've accomplished what they have. So, some thoughts there.
Yep. I actually this morning I just released a video which is the my wish list for the next ATEM Mini model. Yes. So I talked about all the features I want to see in the next one, and I made a little mock-up of what the back panel would look like. It was a lot of fun. So.
Cool. Well, everyone needs to go over there and leave their comments as well. I think, Aaron, you probably have Blackmagic's attention with your channel. So, and I know they do watch the comments. So. They pay attention. So if you do have a wish list you'd like to add, go ahead and leave a comment over there as well. Let's see here. What else have we got? Just a quick one. What's the streaming resolution you're using, Aaron? And we talked about the platform. So this is StreamYard.
Yeah. And are you in 720 mode in StreamYard? Because StreamYard just added 1080, but I don't know if that was on their paid plan or not.
I think it's on their paid plan. So we're just using 720 here today. Yeah.
So this stream to YouTube is 720, and then we're both feeding it from the ATEM Mini, which is 1080. So I guess the browser is the thing doing the downscaling.
Yeah. That or maybe it's the platform or maybe it's the browser. I'm not sure which is.
I'm not sure actually where it's I'm not sure where that's happening. It's probably the platform. It's probably StreamYard doing it.
Yeah. Cool.
We're probably pushing up 1080 into StreamYard.
Right. Cool. Okay. There's a question here from Travis. ATEM Mini arrived yesterday. Does it have a multi-view output yet? So Travis, I guess we need clarification. Did you get the ATEM Mini or the ATEM Mini Pro? That's really the question.
Yeah. So the ATEM Mini does not have multi-view, and it won't get it at this point. But the ATEM Mini Pro and the Pro ISO do have multi-view.
Yep. There we go. All right, so we've come to the top of the hour. Aaron, where should people go if they'd like to learn more about you and about live streaming?
Yeah, for sure. My YouTube channel is probably the best place. It's my name, Aaron Parecki, just spelled like that down there. And that is where I publish videos on live streaming and ATEM minis, and I host a weekly live stream. So come ask questions on the show. It's always fun, good time. We have a good chat. I try to stick to an hour, and then we usually go an extra half hour because I always get good questions, and it's fun talking about this stuff.
It is, and I would highly recommend it because you have some really cool things there too. Like for example, one thing that's always just really cool to me at the start, you have the map, and you have everyone that's joined shows up on the world map as to where they're coming from. So
yeah, I started doing that because I was people always just join the stream and say hi from Portland, hi from Germany or whatever, and I noticed people were doing that, and I was like, oh well, I could just put those on a map. That'd be kind of fun, and it works great. It's the other benefit of being a software developer is I can hack that stuff together pretty quick.
Very good. Well, thank you, Aaron, so much. Thanks for spending your Sunday morning with us. I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for all your insights.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you all later, and get out there and make some great sound in the meantime. Take care, everybody.